Welcome to episode 17 of the Helpful Huddle podcast. Thank you so much for listening in today. In our episode today, I get the opportunity to interview Roger Pollard. He is a new friend of mine and someone I am very excited to be interviewing today. You are in for a treat as we dive into his story and how he is helping others. So turn up your volume, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. Welcome back to the Helpful Huddle podcast. I am your host, Luke, and I'm sitting here with a new friend of mine, Roger Pollard. Say hi to the people, Roger.
How we doing? How we doing?
And I hope we're all doing good. I know I am. I'm glad to be sitting here with you. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with me today.
Oh, no problem. I think it's a blessing. Every day we have on this earth is a blessing, and anytime we have the ability to talk and communicate with people in general, I think it's a great thing. It's a great day.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Just for the people sitting and listening, how me and Roger met each other. It's a very quick, short story. We met about 3 minutes ago. Um, we we connected, and he agreed to come on the podcast, and that's kind of the full story. And then we signed on, talked about 3 minutes ago. I think that about sums it up.
And there it is, I think it's a testament to where we are as a society, where the amount of people that we have access to because of technology is, I mean, it's insurmountable. It's exponential. So, what I'd say 20 years ago, this would probably never happen or take place, but we're in 2023. So this is just another day in paradise.
And I can only imagine going back and like every meeting has to be in person.
That's definitely pre-COVID, right?
Oh
But
man.
you know, it and I like the term technology as being evil, or being a bridge to a waste of time. But if we use our time productively, what technology offers us, we can be so productive that you might not even recognize yourself in a week or in 3 days if you really hone down and really get your schedule on going and really get things in order. So it's a gift and a curse, right? It could be a blessing or it could be a curse, right?
You definitely can. You're hitting the nail on the head right now. I'm looking forward to this interview. Um,
Yeah.
but with all that said, are you ready to get going?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's roll.
All right, man, let's hit it. So I always like to start off my interviews pretty broad, and I want to learn more about you. I want to learn about your story, as much information as you are willing to talk about from childhood to now. How did you get to this point?
Okay. For me, just grew up as I guess a student athlete. Those were the main two things in my life were sports and school. As long as
Mhm.
as long as I was doing what I was supposed to do in school, then I could go out and play my sports and so in assessing what I had to do, I just got what I had to do done. Um, my parents are immigrants to America from Trinidad, and then my mom's from Trinidad, my dad's from Guyana. So it was, I guess, a really instilled hard work, really instilled a lot of virtues within myself that I still stand on today. And then with that, I ended up getting a football scholarship, played college football at North Carolina State.
Congrats.
Uh, Came back, ended up coaching football. So I went from playing to coaching, and that transition from college to the professional life, because it was still kind of the same niche, I'd say, was kind of easy, kind of seamless. And
Mm.
I want to say about 3 years ago, I got out of coaching, and figured, whether I was a teacher, whether I was a coach, or whether even as a player, motivation was something that was always big for me. And started writing, motivational books. Wrote some football books, and then I started writing some motivational books, and really wanted to the nook or the area that I wanted to really hone in on was, anytime you hear a motivational video, it talks about what we have to do, right? You need to go, you need to work, you need to do this or do that. But I thought, if I'm an individual, the first thing I really need to find out is who I am. So, I broke my motivational series up into 3 parts. And the first part was really trying to give people a better indication of who they were as an individual by using group expectations. So from a psychological perspective, giving people what the big five personality traits were, and then the five agents of socialization. And now knowing that, having an idea of what those things are, I can compare myself to that and know whether I'm conscientious, whether I'm agreeable, whether I'm neurotic, whether I know these things and now I can identify these things in me. And now that I have my home base, now we can start talking about a virtue-based and action-based life. And that's the second part of that motivational series. And then right now, currently working on the third one, which is philosophical, theological, and just a big pain in my butt. But there are no there are there are no there are no great gifts without great challenges. I'll say it like that. So
Mm.
um, that's really kind of me in a nutshell. From a really thick and heavy sports background. I was a head football coach for about 10 years on the high school level, um, and now just teaching and then taking care of my two kids and spending that family time that is also precious and always fleeting.
That's a great story, and I think a lot of us follow in that, whether we played at the collegiate level or played in high school or whatever it is. But
Yeah,
the story of a transition and transitioning from one phase of your life to another is huge, and you're currently doing something completely different. I feel like you're you're out. I don't know if you're completely out of sports, but you're out of coaching and writing books and teaching, and that's your life now. I think that's amazing.
yeah,
I
yeah,
wanted to ask you kind of because I think that's something that hits home for me at least. I played collegiate baseball, not at the Division 1 level, but at the Division 2. But the transition out of something that you've kind of found your identity in for a long
yeah.
time. How
Right.
how is that transition for you?
It was. I think it was easier for me just because I stayed in sports, right?
Hmm.
Just still coaching. So it wasn't as big as kind of a it wasn't as big as a hit for me because of that. I think this one where I'm totally out of sports now, like I tell my students now today, the difference between a coach and a teacher is that um, as a coach, I'm just teaching a sport, right? Now I might have to approach things a little bit differently, of course, but it's really all the same thing. When we look at it, a coach is literally a carriage that takes people from one place to another. But that's what I'm doing when I'm teaching world history, or that's what I'm doing when I'm teaching sociology, and that's what I was doing when I was teaching football. Now, since football was, of course, near and dear to your heart, and I love football more, of course, than I loved sociology or world history, you put a little bit more passion in it. But I think we're always in a transition phase. I think we take for granted that we're going to wake up the next morning, right? Every
Hmm.
day is a transition. So, um, what I look at is, and what I tell my students is, every endeavor that you take part in, there is a lesson and blessing in that activity. So there are things that I learned from coaching. There are things I learned from playing. There are things I learned from everything that you do in life that you can take with you. My joke is when I was in high school, I wanted to be a model, and I practiced my smile off. I practiced my one way walk. I practiced all these different things. And when I got to the shoot, they told me I was too ugly to be a model. But with that, I also understood what the value of hard work was. Coming up with a plan of when you want to get better at something, you break it down and you put it into increments. You come up with a goal. I can't hit a target that I don't aim at. So all of those things that we learn as athletes, they're not lost when we hang our hat up or when I put my helmet off. It you take those with you, and those things, because they're just so valuable. Um, they wouldn't be virtues, or they wouldn't be what we did in the sports world if they weren't valuable, right? We just have to
Hmm.
learn how to use them and utilize them in another field, right? So as a head coach, I was very detail oriented. I was always planning things out. I had a 3 month plan, a 6 month plan, a 12 month plan. So I do the same thing with writing. You come up, okay, what's the idea that I want to come up with? all right, this chapter, that chapter, this chapter, I want to have this much done in this amount of time. So um, everything is like we're always transitioning. Um, uh, as individuals, as families and as societies, we're always changing. The one constant in our life is change. So, um, and then from coaching to teaching to being a father, every every experience that we have in our life has a lesson and blessing within it. We just have to have the wisdom or maturity to be able to extract that and use that where we need
That you're speaking facts, my friend. Like everything you're saying, I'm
it.
rolling with. And before, selfishly, before we keep diving into what everything you're talking about, I have to back up to your playing days. Um, just selfishly, who was probably the best player that you played against, or most well known, or played with? He could have been on your team.
uh, Played with would be Philip Rivers.
I was
You know,
wondering
there
if you were
was
there at that time.
yeah, Philip. The story on Philip Rivers is really crazy. What he played how many years in the league? I don't know, 20 or 17, something
I'd
ridiculous.
say
And
something ridiculous.
yeah, and um, and North Carolina State was the only place that offered him as a quarterback. Everybody else
Hmm.
wanted him to go as a defensive end or as a tight end. And the lesson I took from that is, the NFL spends millions of dollars trying to analyze who and what or what people can do, and I think it's a testament to human beings that we cannot predict who can be great and who can't. Like every year there's a first round bust. Philip
Mm-hmm.
Rivers played in the league for 17 years. No school really wanted him to play. Didn't no school wanted him to play quarterback other than North Carolina State. And he goes to the NFL for 17 years. And my lesson in that is just don't let other people define what you can and cannot be. But the first person you have to be able to convince is yourself. Like forget what other people say, and you do have to be honest because just because you want something doesn't mean it wants you. So T.A.
Mm-hmm.
McClendon, Mario Williams, I played against Julius Peppers, um, uh, DeMarc. We had so many guys. We had so many guys. Pat Thomas, Stephen Tulloch. I played against on my high school team. Jonathan Vilma was on that team. I played
Wow.
against Roscoe Parrish. Frank Gore was on that team. Played against Andre Johnson. Just a lot of guys being in South
Yeah.
Florida. The list is it's a long list. It's a long list.
That's amazing, and a lot of those names I very much recognize. But even going back to the point that you talked about with Philip Rivers, and like no one wanted, at least no one wanted him to play the position. I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
more recent reminder reminds me of Lamar Jackson coming out, everyone talking about him going to
100%.
switch into wide receiver or running back or defensive back or whatever it might be, and he was steadfast and now he's a quarterback. And I think outside of maybe one or two teams, every team but the Ravens passed on him as a quarterback because he was the last pick of the first round.
Right.
So
Right.
uh,
100%.
say, then
And
unanimous
and that's
MVP,
yeah. And it's easy after the fact for us to say how could that happen. Now
of
that
course.
also happens to people who end up never playing again or don't have that talent. So it's also that's why I tell people, um, just because you want it doesn't mean that it wants you.
Yep.
But with that said, if there is something that is speaking to you, speaking through you, and it's not your ego, it's from the amount of dedication and preparation that you have put in, and you're giving an honest assessment of what you think it takes and what you can do, and if it's realistic and it is true, then you can break through and make your dreams. You can break through the fabric of reality and make your dreams a reality. Um, but you've got to be objective, and you've got to put the work in. These things don't happen to everybody, and that's why it's so special. So when you've put in that type of dedication, you've put in that type of time, and you're being objective and honest with yourself and in your assessment, then the sky is the limit. And those examples are, I think there are battle cries as individuals who are always aiming at something. It's the reason why we have a brain is to come up with an idea, and if we think it's powerful enough, to move it into reality through action.
Love that. And I love everything you're saying. And just some questions are popping up in my head that I want to ask you about because you said at the beginning at how like the motivation side has always been like, or at least near and dear to you. And just by the words you're saying, everything that you're putting out there, I can tell that that's so true. You're very authentic in it. But I'm wondering, like, kind of, was there a moment in your life? Was there something that caused you to be this passionate about the motivation side and the mindset side behind it?
Um, no, like I've always been that guy. Like I was the guy in
Got it.
high school where like we're in the weight room and I'm talking about this school or that school is working out when people are getting tired. I was the rah rah guy.
Mm,
So I've always been in that. Uh, but for me individually, what got me into writing is I went through a depression about I want to say it's going on 3 years ago, and coming out of that, uh, I
mm,
I really I really looked back and gave a hard assessment on the things that the things that matter most for me, and that was spending time with my family, and that's where I got out of coaching because everybody, coaching wise, if there's 24 hours in a day, it takes 24 hours each day, so really wanted to spend a lot more time with the things that I felt had the strongest bond and tie with me, uh, that are going to inject that, I guess, positivity within me, and and then in an effort to still keep with the athletic side, I started writing. So I wrote 3 football books, and then I started saying, you know what, I think it'll be a cool idea to write a motivational book, in that sense of giving my kids a as a high school teacher for 15 years, there are a lot of commonalities that I see ninth graders make, a lot of mistakes that I see that they make, and a lot of it is founded in a confusion of self. And of course, at
mm.
that age, they're going through so many changes, like physically, hormonally. Like they don't know who they are. Hell, as grown people, a lot of us don't know who we are. So I was like, well, let me start this. So this first book was just to my kids. Like when you're going into ninth grade, I want you guys to read this. And then it kind of just turned into this project where I'm still writing, and I'm on book 3 of that motivational series. So I don't it didn't maybe I guess that depression episode kind of pushed me towards a path where I, I guess I wasn't doing it in a sports sense, and now it just pushed
Mm.
me more into writing. But this has just always been me. I don't know why.
No, I love that, and thank you for the vulnerability of talking about that. I didn't know about any kind your the depression episode or what you called it.
Oh yeah.
Um, and if you don't mind me asking a question about that, because I think something that's finally starting to get some steam behind it is focusing on mental health, and I
Yes.
think
Yes.
growing up in I guess probably our generation, because this generation we're starting to focus more on mental health now, but it was very much ingrained to push that stuff down, don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Especially in athletes, you're an athlete, suck it up and move on type thing. Um,
Right.
but if you don't mind talking about maybe a little bit about your journey with that, but most importantly, like there's people out there that are struggling with mental health and depression. Um, any tips you
Well,
have for them to help them come through and work on it and hopefully get come out of it?
yeah. Well, I would say that the big reason why it's so big today is that we're seeing the numbers in depression, in self harm, especially in adolescence, and they're skyrocketing. Now, what that did do in a lot of my journey into looking at the physiological aspects behind it is, well, when we say mental health and we sit there and we think that our mind is or our brain is in our head, and our brain is really, it runs throughout our body, right? So the first thing I say with anybody who's dealing with any type of depression or feeling just down is you have to look at the big three. And this is the first triangle of my courage, love, and discipline virtues. Say, in order to be courageous, you have to know, you have to be willing to move forward, knowing that both good and bad can take place in the future. But the courage block is, well, how are you eating? Like, what are you putting into your body? You know, how many fake foods, how many non-natural things are we consuming and putting into our body? That's one. Two, how are you sleeping? Right, your circadian rhythm. What is that like? What's that? What's going on with that? And then how are you exercising? So when looking at those three factors, those are the like, flat out. Those are the first three things that we really have to look at because it does change how you feel. And I've been this has been my deep dive, not only because of the depression, but just because it's where the information is leading me. And like if you eat healthy for a week, you would be amazed at the difference in how you feel. And
Hmm.
um, it's just totally crazy, and it's eye opening to me. And then two, going into exercising, just a 15-minute walk. If you take a 15-minute walk, it actually puts more BDNF in your system. BDNF stands for brain derived neurotrophic factor. That comes from your actual muscles, and it comes from your liver. That breaks the blood barrier in your brain. It actually goes into your hippocampus, so it increases neuron synapses. It just don't exercise for washboard abs. Exercise for brain function. And they're getting it into Parkinson's, or studying in Parkinson's disease and dementia and all of these different things. So um, if you're going through a mental health crisis, or if you're going through a depression, if you're going through something, one, don't just don't just think of it as mental health. Think of it first as health, and in health, those are the big three. All right, and now if you're exercising, if you're sleeping, if you're eating pretty right, now, and you're still feeling like crap, now you might need to go see a professional, and it might be something a little bit farther up or down the spectrum, however you want to look at it. But I think the majority of the things that we're witnessing today are caused by those three. People not sleeping enough, and then two, uh, or three or four, whatever number I'm on, serotonin. The big thing uh, that comes, or 98% of our serotonin comes from our gut. So again, how much fake foods are we eating? How many things are we consuming that our grandparents didn't consume? So with food, I'm not telling people what to eat and what not to eat, but my rule of thumb is, like, if your grandparents didn't eat it, you probably shouldn't eat it, because there's all kinds of ingredients that you can't name, and we have no idea how they're affecting us from a physiological, technical, practical uh, level in which you can measure it. And then four is fellowship. I don't think there's enough communal community kind of family type atmosphere as athletes. We know, like, there is nothing like being on a team. There is nothing
Hmm.
like having a group of friends that you can be with, and and the friends, like, followers aren't friends. Like, people
No.
who are just scrolling all the time, that's not friends. Like, really getting out and having a close group of friends that you're connected with, and that you can bounce ideas off with, where you can have a conversation with and be open and honest, and not really. It's not about judgment. It's about all of us trying to move past whatever it is we're moving past on a daily basis, because everybody has problems. Everybody has something that's going on. Everybody's going to have something that stresses them, and uh, and I guess that's really it. That's my message to whoever it is that might be going through something. Those big three, and then trying to just uh, come up with a group of friends that you can be honest with, and you can be you with, and you can investigate this thing called life with.
That's an amazing message, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I couldn't agree with you more with all of it. I mean, and I especially want to hone in on that last piece because I think that's something that has really fallen by the wayside, especially when we went through COVID and shutdowns and things of that nature. That we really and social media and these Zoom calls, like we were talking about earlier, like blessing and a curse. Technology is
Yeah,
great,
yeah,
but it's not a substitute for that real community, that real fellowship, that real intertwined personal connection. We're meant to be around other people. We're
yeah.
all in every community of history. We're not loners. We're always in some sort of community.
And we know that. Like me and you, we're having this conversation right now, but if you were physically here in front of me, we know that the vibe, that everything is absolutely totally different. There's
Hmm.
the amount of information, um, that that's transmitted and communicated between two people. Uh, we have no idea, right? Like I think after people shake hands, I think 75% of the time they make a gesture towards their nose. It's like we're subtly we're taking on subtle clues that we don't know consciously, but our body do know. So like the science on that and on the psychological perspective is it's ridiculous. It's crazy. Some of the things that really affect us and I say marketers know. You go into McDonald's, every McDonald's everywhere smells exactly the same. And it's not
Hmm.
because of the food. They want it to be a certain way. So they're marketing these things, they're using these things uh for us. And so what are the things that speak to us that we may not know that language or be able to communicate it consciously, but do make an effort or do make a change for us subconsciously. So just paying attention to that and being able to be around people going out and having fun and then realizing, and this is my last one, is serotonin levels are measured by how we measure ourselves versus the people we see. And I think the amount of people that we see now, given Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and online TV, the amount of faces that the human being sees that are fake faces, and we all do it. We take a picture, and if we don't like what we look like, we take another picture. So on Instagram, we're always seeing everything's best shot, but that's what we know consciously, but that's not what our brain knows. We're seeing pretty face, model, pretty face, and now that might be a cause for serotonin drop. I don't know. That's one of my hypotheses. The amount of fake faces or doctored faces that the adolescents see today versus 20 years ago, the percentage of straight beautiful is it's had to skyrocket, and
Hmm.
maybe that's one of the reasons why we're having some of this mental health crisis is our brains are literally believing the lies we tell ourselves when we're posting these doctored faces and these filtered faces, and then scroll through them until 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning because for whatever reason.
Man, I think you're speaking so many truths right now that whether it's a hypothesis back or it's backed by science, I think there's anecdotal evidence to support some of the stuff that you're saying, man. And stuff I haven't even thought about what you were just talking about, like with the fake faces and every. I've thought about the on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, everything looks perfect, but it's a false perception of reality. Um,
100%.
but you put it in a whole different way, mind blowing to me. So again, thank you for sharing. And I want to kind of ask you because you speak with a lot of, I mean, one, conviction in your voice, but two, you use a lot of facts and like you're talking sciencey stuff, which
Yeah.
makes me just wonder like e- what education or training, or is this just a lot of independent research that you're doing to kind of get to this point of where you're able to speak to it at this level?
Okay. Well, yeah. This isn't something that this is because I'm in book three.
Mhm.
Like I said, the first book was find out about yourself from a personality and a sociological standpoint, and then my courage, love, discipline was courage was exercise. So then I went in and looked at whether it's scholarly journals or because my wife is in college right now, so I was using her access to get all of this information. So it's just something that I'm putting in to book three. So that's why and then I just love psychology. So I barely kind of listen to music, and on the way into work or on the way from picking my kids up, we're listening to John Vervaeke, or we're listening to Liam McGilchrist, or we're listening to the Huberman podcast. I'm always like trying to get a little bit more information, especially because I'm in the middle of this book. Um, uh, and So yeah, it's really because I'm in the middle of book three is really why it is. Because as book two was courage, love, discipline, like just give it to you. Courage is this. Love, study and scholarship, study history from an object of study point of view, study psychology, um, spend time dancing and creative assessment, like going out and dancing. It changes your body, and so I had those. I just put it out there, and then this third book was I really wanted to go in and do all of the research about it, and it's really mind numbing the amount of facts that are out there that we kind of just we go about it on a daily basis and think that everybody and what we see on TV is the truth. And www stands for World Wide Web. Anything in the world is out there. Any information in the world is out there, and all we have to do is kind of search for it.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with all of that as well. And I'm sitting here thinking like you're talking, you're going out and you're speaking, you're writing these books and you're literally teaching our youth, and you're being a mentor to like so many people, whether you know it personally or not. And it just makes me wonder, like, did you have any mentors in your life growing up that had a hand in molding this man that's sitting before us today?
Oh yes, and we all do.
Right.
Like I tell really everybody when I'm talking. Um, the most important thing that has ever happened to you in your life is that you were born. If you weren't born, nothing ever happens. And then the second thing, because we're not giraffes and or we're not sharks, or like someone took care of you. So
Mhm.
those are the two things. Those people who took care of you, I don't care whether you like them or not. If you have the ability to say that you didn't like them, aside from like massive abuse or anything like that, um, then they did their job. So one is my parents. I would not be here without them. And then as an athlete, my different coaches coming up from high school and college, and then my mentors that were helping me in the teaching profession. But it's really everybody. Every single time that you have a conversation, um, you're learning something. You're learning a little bit new, or you're changing in this way or that way. Like we said, you literally change every day. 1% of your cells die every day. So in 100 days, you have 100% new cells in your body. That the most constant thing for us is change. So everybody you come across, everybody that you speak to, everybody that you communicate to, is helping change, shape, and mold and build you. I think there's a weird there's a weird opinion about understanding things in our day and age. We think that just because we understand something that we have to agree with it, and I think that's why we're so polarized. If you turn on the news today, why it's like I can understand your point, but that doesn't mean I have to agree with it. And nobody
Mhm.
wants to take the time out to understand other people's points before. If I disagree with you, I don't even want to hear what you say. But that's blindness. To see a thing from one side is not to have seen it at all. And there is no thing that we see in totality. We'll say that this is a phone, but you don't see the whole phone. You only see the back, or you only see the front. I only see the back. I have to look at things from multiple perspectives. So, in terms of mentors and then, different coaches, my parents, but I think it's everything. Any person that you communicate with, anything that you listen to, anything that you um, that you pay attention to that gives you information, um, gives you the ability to make a choice, and that choice is between entertainment and education. If it's entertainment, I don't have to change anything about myself. But if it's education, if I learn something new that is in direct opposition of something that I believe, I do the research on it. And if I believe this new thing, I have to cut away that old me. That's what education is. And I think that's why people shy away from education. I don't want to believe, I want to know. So, you get that knowledge and it goes against what you believe. Now people, start getting in their feelings. You got to separate it. You can understand things. That doesn't mean you agree with them. And if we can I take life that way, So, hell, I learn from my kids, and they're 8, but every now and then, I think my son said, if you judge one, you judge another. Where we were just talking about having opinions
Mm,
about other people, and
mhm.
and it's true. If there's anybody you're going to judge, you need to judge yourself. So, people are going to make their own decisions and whatnot. Understand why it is that they may make a decision, and it doesn't mean that you have to agree with them, but really do the research and trying to understand where someone else's point is coming from.
Love that, and I think that I wish that more people thought the same way that you do, that I do about that. As far as for me, it's like two things to be true. I can understand your
Yeah,
point of view. That doesn't
yeah,
mean that I have to agree with the point of view. But
mm,
so many issues can be solved with just that level of, or I guess it's just leveling with somebody, trying to
mm,
see it through their eyes. So many
yeah,
things could be solved by just doing that. And I think there's way too much of what you literally just said of, oh, you have an opposing point of view. I don't even want to talk about this anymore.
right,
And
right.
yeah, the louder you speak, the less you hear, the less you learn.
hmm
So,
hmm
I
And
mean,
it's I think we've and we're a consumer type society, I guess, and you can't consume wisdom. You can only grow that, So we oh, you're mature because you get a car, No, you have to become certain things. You can't get certain things. So that's my stress point. I don't you don't skip ahead to the end of the movie. You have to watch the whole movie. and and I think that's, if we take more of that approach to just life, I think things will be a little bit better. But it's kind of a win-loss, me versus you, me above you. you know two truths that are two truths that can be in direct opposition can still be true. How many ways are there to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? I can make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich like an infinite amount of ways. So
mm,
when we're talking about super complex and complicated issues, there are a million ways to get things done. And no one person, well, I'll say it like this: every single individual is an individual, as in, I'm not my label. I'm not my group identity. I'm not like, there will never be another me. There will never be another you. Like, me and you are having this conversation right now, but what you're taking from the conversation is totally different from what I'm taking from the conversation. It's totally different from what someone else is taking from the conversation. So your past is never past. It's always moving with you. And because of that, there will never, like, everyone is as unique as they are. So when they're speaking, they're coming from a totally unique perspective. So, listen to them. And now I also challenge people to, you have to understand why you believe certain things, because if you don't, history has shown that we will kill people for the color of their skin, or we'll kill people because they were from a different region. We'll do some malicious and violent things to each other for no other reason than we were
hmm
told so. And we're just in an age now where the information is out, and there are bad people out there. Let's not get that wrong. But um, I I think that we're always growing, and the more information that you can come in up with and think critically about, and arrive to opinions, um, which I say everything, there's only one fact and everything else is an opinion. I say, if you break the word opinion down, it's something that you need to keep an open I on. And if you think of your opinions that way, anytime someone comes to you with something that might be controversial to what you think, an opinion open, eye on, then you receive that information. You can think critically about it, and then you can come up and articulate why it is that you feel a certain way, and then have a little bit of discourse. And maybe you were wrong, and now you have to cut some of the beliefs that were tied onto that opinion, and now you're growing. Or maybe they do. Or you just agree to disagree. It's one of those three. But we're all we're all going to the same place eventually. So it's like,
Eventually.
let's just everyone just have their time in the sun, and try and enjoy this thing, and try and continue to spread love, and spread happiness throughout the world. Why not?
I think that's incredible, and I just want you to know that don't know if you came up with open eye on, but I am definitely going to
Yeah,
steal it. So,
yeah, yeah. Well, not yet. It's in book three, but now I'm playing. Yes,
ah,
yes, yes.
let me beat you
I
to it. I'm just kidding.
No, you're good. You're good. 100%. No, I just I think it's a great idea. Where if we stop, I think we're a bunch of 5-year-olds jumping up on tables and saying, "This is my opinion. This is my opinion." Well, an opinion just means that you haven't seen the full picture, and no one sees the full picture. So, listen to people, be able to think critically about it. And I think the biggest point is, if you cannot articulate a very well reason behind why you believe certain things, then you probably believe it because someone told you, or you probably believe it because that's how you were born, or you probably believe, if you do not challenge your beliefs, how many German soldiers were shooting pregnant Jews in the back of the head, and oh my gosh, but it's real. And every nasty and malevolent war, and all of those things throughout history, they were all done by human beings. So our belief systems are the most powerful thing that there are. So, like, challenge them, and you have to challenge your own as well.
Think that that's also something that's not done near enough. And there's too much blind faith of just this influencer or this quote unquote expert said this, and there's no why questioning behind it. And I think it's something that I've learned because I married my wife, but her sister is a doctor. My now brother-in-law, her brother-in-law is also a doctor. And I was talking to them, and these guys are at the top of their profession, they're doctors. And the fact that they encourage you to go for like a second opinion, a third opinion,
Yeah.
I think even taking it down to that, like they want you to validate what they're saying, and if someone else gives another opinion, hey, why? Like that second question of why,
Yeah.
I think is just so important, and people don't do it enough.
Yeah. Well, you have to know your why. Why are you doing these things? And now there's the other side. And I say
Mhm.
we are, like, if I told you that a zebra was camouflage, you'd tell me no, a lion's camouflage. Zebra doesn't have a camouflage, but zebras are camouflaged against the herd. So we, as people, we don't like to stick out in the herd, because then the lion gets us. As long as we're doing what the herd does, as long as we're doing what everybody else does, then we're fine. And I
Mhm.
get that. I understand that. A lot of and all of the examples, but peer pressure, all of those are examples of that herd like safety in what everybody else is doing mentality. But every now and then, the group or the ideals of the group can go wrong. We've seen that
Mhm.
throughout history. So we always have to, because of that, we always have to check ourselves. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why I'm writing these books for my kids. And in the love triangle, one of the things about love was study and scholarship. You have to study history, and trace how philosophical ideas kind of um, uh, move throughout history, and what they did, and study history from an objective point of view. study the people who are attacking, and study the culture that was being attacked. And um, our history is barbaric, but it is what it is. What did we learn from it?
Mhm.
Um, and go from there. So um, I'm not saying run around naked and say, "Oh yeah, this is how I was born." You don't have to be too outlandish, but within reason, get in, get some information, and if you don't believe something, be able to have a conversation about negativity without being negative. Be able to separate the topic from the emotional output, and
Mm.
I think we'll be in a better place. We're not shouting each other down, but we're actually trying to come up with solutions. Now, not me versus you, but me and you. I am because we are. It's not I think, therefore I am. I'm the only reason I identify as an individual is because you are there. If you weren't there, if there were only a bunch of me's, then I'm the only thing. I'm just it. Now that there's differences in other people, we can celebrate those things, and we can find what we're similar in, and we can fellowship that way. So
I mean, you're again, I keep saying it, but you're spitting facts over there. And I, one thing that stuck out to me was we were talking about everyone yelling at each other and having different opinions and no conversations. Like, I don't think I've ever had, I don't think I've ever resolved an argument when people were yelling.
right,
You know,
right,
I don't think that exists.
yeah,
So, so just something to keep in mind. But you also mentioned earlier about like your kids and the love of this, and like that's why you started doing all of this. And you use your experiences and your pure love and desire of bettering people and positivity to kind of, I don't know if it's you've started a business, but you are motive in motion or
yeah.
motive in
Well,
motivation.
yes,
Um, but where I want to go with that is because you have an interesting story of this all came from like literally your motivation to do it, like to share this message. And I want to talk about more of the mindset side of actually starting something. And
yeah,
like you decided to write your first book. You decided to start doing this or doing that, get out of coaching for the betterment of yourself and then start writing books. Like there's I just feel like that there's so many people that want to start something, but they never do.
you're right,
And
yes,
I want you to kind of tackle that of like why, not necessarily why, because I think it's the fear of failure as to why they don't do something. There's always an excuse, but how you get over that.
yeah. Well, it's two things. One, the only reason I'm able to do anything, the only reason I'm able to have this conversation with you is because I'm able to ignore other things. If I wasn't able to ignore other things, I wouldn't be able to focus in and hone in on this. So like it's 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 not really, I think it's not really the fear of failure. It's more of being able to do things and take my mind off of the thing that I say I want to do. So the first thing is find your why, right? Like I wanted to write this book because I wanted my kids in ninth grade. Like here it is, boom. And then like we don't have ideas; ideas have us. Then from there, this just exploded. Like book two, I wasn't planning on writing anymore. I was like, I'm done writing, and then that just happened. So one is start. Like, what are you scared of? Like if you if I wrote if I wrote my first book and I sold 1 million copies, then that just means that that task wasn't hard enough for me. Like everybody fails. Like think of think of it like this. The first time you tried to walk, did you walk? Everybody knows, no, I didn't. Did you care if you had piss and poop in your diaper? Did you care if you had shoes on? No, the only thing you cared about was walking. Well, right now, and this is the crappy part of it, if we had to learn how to walk right now when we're adults, I don't think anybody would do it because we
Mhm.
would shift our focus to, oh, I don't have the right outfit. Oh, no, my shoes. We're going to come up with excuses. Like at the end of the day, if you want to do something, I don't care what you say. Belief is be life, Belife. Not, so if you change the word around, it's what are you doing? So if you believe you want to do something, that means you do it. Point blank, period. Now, I didn't say be successful at it. I didn't say you're going to sell a million copies. I didn't say that everybody's going. No, I said you do it. Now, once you do it, now you can assess, right? Now you can assess, like, okay, am I good at it? Or I'm not good at it? Do I still want to do it or not? But if you never take that action, then I don't think it's a belief. I just think you're doing what a lot of these high school kids do to me is lie. The first person we learn to lie to is ourselves. That's my biggest thing. It's the number one thing, flat out. It is what it is. So, um, and we have to be able. Well, I'm sorry. Given the research, it's not lie, it's bullshit. And when I say bullshit, is the same thing I'm saying. I'm able to take the focus off of something and put it somewhere else. Right? I have this one task that I have to do, but there's another one that I also have to do, but probably not as much as this one. But if I take it and put my opinion, put my focus here, I'll forget about this. Now, this is still something that was important, but it wasn't as important as that. If you have something, then you build that habit into your routine, whether it's working out, whether it's eating right, whether it's like come up with a plan. I cannot hit a target that I am unwilling to look at, let alone walk to. But the first thing is I have to look at it. So write it down. Like, what do you want to do? And you're not going to make a masterpiece, but it's just start. Start it for 5 minutes a day. First thing that you do when you wake up for 5 minutes, whether it's I'm gonna write a book, or I don't know if it's a vacation, all that other stuff where money is involved. I know it's hard. That's harder. I get you. But if it's a task, if it's something that you want to start. Start on your own time. Why not? Why not? How can you get good at it? Something. How can you get good at something that you never start? Please answer that question for me. And no one can, because everybody knows that that's not. It's Yeah, it's just the way it is. If you don't like that fact, then I guess you got to take it up with whatever higher power you believe in. Right? It's not my fault, but that's just it. Start off in small chunks. If you want to start working out, start off 5 minute block. Five in the morning, first thing when you wake up, do 5 minute ab circles. That's it. 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes is easy, and then you build on that. And once you've created once you've created a habit, then you're good. And I mean, it's a Chinese concept. Wu Wei. Master Wu Wei in Kung Fu Panda. Wu Wei means trying not to try. Anybody who has played basketball or played a sport, or anybody has been in flow, anybody who has been on fire, how do you get yourself on fire? Well, you shoot the basketball. Okay, what else? There is no what else. You just shoot, and then all of a sudden you've gone through so many reps, and then you can't miss. But no one can tell you how to get into that zone. The only thing that we know in order to get into that zone is you have to do it. So it's like, hey, look, if you want to do something, you do it. I wrote a book, wrote another one, and now I'm writing the third one. Yeah, hey, that's it. As simple as that. And then now, of course, you have to reflect, and okay, is this still what I want to do? Is it worth the time that I'm investing in it? Is it still something? But now you're able to extract the lesson and blessing from the action. And if it's the right lesson and blessing, now you can move on. And now I wanted to be a writer, but now I'm going to be a speaker. Or now I wanted to write. Oh, I tried the writing. Now I wanted to speak. No, I'm not going to do that. Now I'm going to do podcast. And now it's only through trial and error that we can finally find whatever our niche is. But if we never start, we're just always stuck right there. So start and start small. Don't start big. Dream big. Your goals should scare you 100%. Dream big, but break it down and again start off in 5 minute increments and start at first thing in the morning so you have no excuse.
Amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. And I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. And I love that you're saying it. And you put it in such a different way than I've ever heard it. And I love the lesson and blessing. And
Mhm.
and I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you said, just start.
Yeah.
And you may have just answered this next question I had for you, but we'll have, and if you did, you're just gonna have to restate it.
Yeah.
But like we are unfortunately getting closer to the end of our episode, and I wanted, like, if our listeners haven't heard anything of the first 50 minutes or however long we've been going, but you had like one takeaway message for them today, like what would that message be?
Uh, my message, my one takeaway message is,
It doesn't have
you
to
know,
be just
every
one.
yeah, um, that my biggest thing is, every day let people know what you think, and every now and then tell them, So, and really what that means is every day be the be the person that you are. Right? Be the enthusiasm, be the joy, be the message that people can see it through you. I said every now and then tell them, so it's through action. And I mean, I'm speaking all of these things now, but I think we kind of overvalue the sales and the marketing and the pitches and slimy and the dirty, and being able to manipulate through words. No, like, really, and even with yourself, reflect and look. Don't tell me what you think, or don't tell me what your goals are. Show me how you work. Let someone else tell you what your goals are. Work work for the things, put effort into those things, so that other people can notice and tell you, oh man, you're trying to get a raise, aren't you? Don't run around telling people you're trying to get a raise. Let people see through your action, or through whatever it is. Oh, you're trying to lose weight. Well, how did you know? Don't tell anybody. Let people have to judge your actions, and let them tell you what those goals are and what you're doing. And then I guess my last thing is, um, uh, fast food companies spend $5 billion a year advertising. What that lets us know is what we put in front of our eyes, what we put into our ears makes a difference. What are you advertising to yourself on a daily basis purposefully? What are the things, like if I asked you what the Pledge of Allegiance was right now, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. You'll know that without a heart. Okay, what's your pledge to yourself? A pledge is a promise,
Mm.
and allegiance is to be aligned with. What is the pledge that you have right now to yourself? And if you don't have one, if that, I mean, I think every country in the world has one. The United States has one. I think the United States is a really good country. Well, okay, let's mimic them. What do you have? What pledge do you have to yourself, for you, to you, and by you? And if you don't have one right now, and if what I said makes sense, make one. You just educated yourself. If you like it, and they say every day when you come into work, or every day when you come into school, we're supposed to pledge, put our hand over our heart and pledge to a nation. Well, why not put your hand over your heart and look in the mirror every morning and make a pledge to yourself? It's got to work. It's why we do it. Well, why wouldn't you have a vow or promise to yourself to work for yourself? I don't know. So, make a pledge. Uh, let the people who you're hanging around, or let the people who you work with, or let the people who you're socializing with be able to see a difference in the action that you're participating in, so that they can say, oh my gosh, you're trying to do this, or you're trying to do that, and you're on that. And then every day is a blessing. Every single day, you're either taking things for granted or you're grateful. So, yeah, that was one or two or three or four.
I appreciate it. And I mean, I have nothing to add to that. I loved everything that you just said, and I've never heard like pledging to yourself, but amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Um, we are getting to the very end of our podcast. I've enjoyed this so much. I definitely, if you have the time, have you on for another one at some point. Just we can, because this conversation can keep going.
Yes, sir.
But I do always want to give an opportunity at the end to for you to quote unquote market yourself, and not so much market yourself, but if people want to continue this conversation with you, if they want if they want to get in touch with you and actually have that conversation with you, if they want to follow your journey and what you're doing, follow you, or yeah, follow along with your books, and especially like with the release coming up, How are they going to be able to do that?
I have a website. It's motiveinmotivation.com. And then my books are on Amazon. The first one is uh, the book everyone should read. I wasn't shy with the title. And then part two of that is Courage, Love, and Discipline. Um, and the third one, I'm hoping to have it out by November, but if it's not this November, it'll be next one because it is a monster. And on there, there's a contact form on my website on motive, motive in in motivation .com, and then my Instagram is at the number one and then Roger Pollard, at the number one Roger Pollard, and um, and then that's it. Uh, yeah,
Oh, perfect. And if for anyone watching on YouTube, it's going to be underneath Roger over here. Anyone listening in the podcast, it's going to be all hyperlinked. Just click on it, follow him. It's all going to be there. But Roger, I really again appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me, talk about this, put some positivity and motivation into the world, and I can't wait to see what you do. So thank you so much.
appreciate it. I appreciate you for doing it. Thank you,
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. But this is where we do sign off and we say bye to the people. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Helpful Huddle podcast. Remember to give us a like and a follow on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter with the user handle at helpful_huddle and the YouTube channel at Helpful Huddle Podcast. You are also able to listen to us on both Spotify and Apple Podcast. The links are also found in the description below. Please reach out with your questions on topics that you would like to learn about in the future.